Welcome. There you have it. That's the essence of hosting a conversation cafe. Your task as a host is really simply to welcome the participants to the table and explain to them. The participants will be friends, neighbors, and some strangers. So you're the welcoming presence. You're explaining to them what's going to happen in your 90 minutes that you have together, and you're going to make them feel comfortable. And you're going to be participating in the conversation along with everybody else. You're not a facilitator, you're not an expert, but you're going to be participating with an eye to whether people are enjoying themselves, whether everybody's having a chance to speak, and how the conversation is going. Is it staying alive and lively? And so you're going to be the person who, like at a dinner party, makes your guests feel welcome and keeps everything quite wonderful. So I'm Vicki Robin, and along with two other people in Seattle, Susan Partnow and Steve Rose, I am one of the co-founders of the Conversation Cafes. And in the next while, you're going to be learning some of the history of the Conversation Cafes. You're going to be learning how to do this method, and also what support you can get from those of us here in Seattle and Conversation Cafe hosts all over the world, so that your experience with the Conversation Cafe can be as easy and wonderful as possible. So Conversation Cafes use a very simple method to help people, as we say, shift from small talk to big talk. Now, what's big talk? We all know what small talk is. Big talk is being able to talk together with people you know and people you don't know about the amazing and complex and challenging times that we're all living through. You don't have to be an expert on the topic of the conversation, and you don't have to be an expert on facilitation. You only have to be willing to engage in a lively conversation with other people so that everybody leaves the table feeling great and having had some insights. One Conversation Cafe host says her task is for everybody to get up from the table and say, I never thought of that before. So the purpose of the Conversation Cafes, of the whole initiative worldwide, is to promote community, democracy, and wisdom worldwide through generating millions of open, respectful, hosted public conversations. Now, how did these come into being? In the summer of 2001, Susan Partnow, Habib Rose, Stephen Rose, and I decided to run an experiment here in Seattle. We decided that we would each locate ourselves every week at a public cafe and invite those wonderful thousands of people who are trying to do good things in the world to come together and consider together the times we're living through. The experiment was amazingly successful. The conversations were great beyond belief. And so on September 10th, we got together, four of us, and we said, well, okay, this is so great. How can we take it everywhere? How could we have a culture of conversation in Seattle? How could we have conversation cafes happening throughout the city every week on various topics, really alive? So we told ourselves, look, we don't have to follow through on any of this. We just have to think of it. And we mapped out the whole strategy for taking it citywide. And of course, the next morning we woke up and the terrorist attacks happened. And we were convinced, like everybody else, that life in America would never be the same. And consequently, we had to learn our way through the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. We couldn't have a knee-jerk reaction. And the Conversation Cafes was a way that people could learn their way through, could consider together what's going on. So we made a commitment to spread them everywhere as quickly as possible. We developed a number of strategies to do this that you might want to do when you start your own Conversation Cafe. The biggest thing we did is we invited everyone, everyone. Sent out mass emails to all our friends. We did posters and put them throughout Seattle. We did flyers and we went to all the public events that were happening where people were trying to learn about the conditions that we just were in and handed out flyers to people. We talked to neighbors and we talked to people in the cafes and invited them over to our tables. This sense of inviting people, I mean, people actually so wanted to talk. They just needed to be invited. The other thing we did is we scheduled what we called Conversation Week. We scheduled a big public event in Seattle for January, towards which we could build energy. And we had about 250 people show up for Conversation Week, talked some about the basic challenges of 9/11, presented some very simple questions to the whole group, and had people use this method to have the conversations. Then, for the whole week, we had celebrities and Seattleites everywhere. Every day we had several conversation cafes happening somewhere in the city so that people could consider together the same set of questions about 9/11. Celebrities would come, but they wouldn't be functioning as experts. They would be functioning as ordinary citizens who were trying as hard as we were to understand what was going on. And we also, of course, contacted the press, and many Conversation Cafe hosts contact their local press, and it's a great story. So we were not only in the local press, but we ended up in the New York Times and on National Public Radio, and that's part of how Conversation Cafes spread. So what happened? Well, by January of 2002, there were 24 ongoing Conversation Cafes in Seattle, and now there are dozens and dozens of cities throughout North America and actually the world where Conversation Cafes are happening. Maybe some cities only one, some 2, 3, 5, or 10 have whole citywide initiatives for Conversation Cafes.